Last week, horrific news reports and video footage emerged showing African migrants being sold into slavery. Some were sold as farm laborers for as little as $400. That's around about 5,000 rand in our currency. These are people fleeing their countries through Libya en route to Europe. The United Nations has since expressed its shock in a media address, while Libyan officials have denounced any knowledge of this matter. Well, joining us from our Hatfield Studios, we've got Ottilia Maunganidze. I'm going to ask her to correct me on that surname. She is an international criminal law expert, legal analyst and strategist working on promoting a peaceful and prosperous Africa at the Institute for Security Studies. Ottilia, good morning to you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Good morning, and good morning to all the viewers.
All right, thank you very, very much for joining us. Ottilia, I was horrified to see this footage, to see these photographs that was taken by international media exposing the gravity of the situation. How long do you think this has been going on for?
Well, from the work that we've been doing, it's been going on for a while, but to be able to exactly determine sort of start date of this current slave trade is a bit difficult. That being said, in Libya, there has been, even dating as far back as when Muammar Gaddafi was still in office, reports indicating that people were being sold into slavery. The issue now is obviously the numbers of people and the manner in which it is being done, which is brought to international attention mostly through CNN finally being able to get some video footage, because there had been reports earlier in the year and last year indicating that this was still going on and that the scale was increasing, but what people didn't have was this video footage.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously been a huge outcry from everybody, and now, of course, official organizations like the United Nations putting their voice to it. The Libyan government are asking for more information, however. Would you agree that they truly know nothing about this, that this has come as a shock to the government?
Right, so the challenge with the Libyan government at the moment is that while there is at least a semblance of a central authority, the reality is a lot of areas are ungoverned and a lot of areas are actually governed by the militia, which means while they can deny and say, well, we haven't seen it because it's not in the areas that they control, I don't think it takes away from the reality that it is actually ongoing. And perhaps the thing that this does is it shines a light on the fact that there is a need for a stronger central government that has control of all parts of the country, not only some.
All right. So there's obviously accusations being leveled at the government saying that they are in a way responsible. Can we say that? Can we blatantly say that, or is it too early to tell?
Right, it would be difficult for me to say that the government itself is responsible. What I can say, and perhaps to reiterate, is that in the absence of full control of a lot of territories, but also the fact that there might be people within the system that themselves are complicit is something that we cannot dismiss.
Yeah.
But I think it's too early right now to put full accountability, let me put it in that way, on the government, but to recognize that the country is in many ways unstable, and it is a country that is struggling to actually have a central government. And those are really key challenges that make it difficult for any authority to be able to have full control, but also full knowledge.
Yeah,
I think the fact that we here in South Africa and elsewhere in the world are seeing this footage while the government, for its part, seems to suggest that they haven't seen it, is something that is quite concerning.
It is very concerning. And also, if we get back to how I introduced this particular interview, is that a lot of the people, or a lot of, and I'm going to call them victims because anybody is a victim of slavery, and one would think that's not happening in this day and age, but many of them are trying to flee their country because of the conditions, thinking that, well, listen, let me get out of here at whatever cost, so perhaps somewhere else will be better. In a way, I mean, that is a very sad circumstance, to know that these people are fleeing for a better life under conditions of slavery.
Right, so I do not think that the majority of people would have known that once they got into Libya, they would be sold into slavery. A lot of the people are coming from parts of West Africa, as far afield as Gambia, but also closer from countries like Niger that border with Libya.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, knowing that the barriers of entry into Europe are quite high, some have chosen to be smuggled across the Mediterranean into Europe, and Libya has become that gateway for a lot of people. The challenge then is where you think that you will be able to cross over without being sold into slavery. And then, as we know, smuggling in and of itself sometimes involves other crimes, such as trafficking and such as the slave trade that we're seeing now. And I don't think that a lot of people would have known that once they got into Libya, they would be sold into slavery, but instead they thought that they would be smuggled across the Mediterranean into Europe.
Yeah, just finally, if we look at the meeting that's going to be held now this week, the AU, European Union, the meeting in Abidjan, do you think anything's going to come of this meeting? What are your expectations? And also, I mean, in 2015, the EU offered Africa $1.8 billion emergency to deal with this. Whatever happened to that money? So let's talk about the money and the meeting, and then if we can wrap it up quickly.
Right, we'll start with the money. The European Union has been rolling out a couple of initiatives on the African continent, including working with the Libyan Coast Guard to stem the flow of migrants, but also to reduce smuggling on the continent. How far that money has gone is quite difficult to tell. I think when you're addressing quite an endemic problem and something that has been going on for years, the results will only be in the medium to long term. So now we're seeing some short-term gains with reduced flows, but it doesn't mean that it's stopping things like the slave trade and the smuggling. When it comes now to the meeting between African leaders and the European Union that will be underway this week, we will see how far up on the agenda they put this matter. Originally, the issues around smuggling as well as the issues around trafficking were on the agenda, but not necessarily the issues around the slave trade. And I think this ought to be a priority, and there ought to be a resolution that speaks to what African leaders, together with the European Union, will do to actually address this. I think it's beyond rhetoric now, and there has to be action.
Ottilia, I thank you so very, very much for your time on such a pertinent issue. I think we need to do a follow-up on this one. Ottilia Maunganidze, I hope I pronounced that better, from the ISS on the horrifying revelations that migrants in Libya en route to Europe are still sold as slaves in Africa in this year, 2017. It's 8 o'clock. Let's get your news.